a lot of leaders have burnout because his ego eats his empathy instead of his empathy eating his ego. So if you want to turn that around, who do you need to be as a leader to build this organization? You need to be a leader that loves and involves their people. They're always in servant leadership mode. They're champions of hope, and we've got to do it consistently.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Culture Work Podcast. My name is Chester Elton. I'm here with my dear friend and co-author, Adrian Gostick. In the Culture Work Podcast, we talk to leaders that are the thinkers, the movers, the shakers, as we used to say, those that are creating the workplace for tomorrow. And we are delighted to have an extraordinary guest with us here today. Adrian, why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, that's right, Chess. Today's guest is someone who truly has lived that mission. We had a chance to work with Garry while he was the former chairman and CEO of the WD-40 company. And under his leadership, the company experienced massive global growth, all powered by one thing, culture. Welcome to the show, Garry.
Hey, Adrian. Hey, Chess. Great to be with you guys. Thank you for inviting me along.
Hey, you led the WD-40 company for 25 years. Now, you were there for 35 years, right? And you're transforming it into one of the world's most admired companies and cultures in the world. You're also the founder, and this is important, write this down, everybody, of The Learning Moment. Garry is now teaching the principles that he learned as the CEO of WD-40 to those that are eager to listen. He's also the author of, I want to make sure I get this here, Any Dumbass Can Do It. It's a wonderful book. And by the way, just want to let you know, Garry, I never travel anywhere without my travel-ready can of WD-40. But Adrian, give us a little more detail about why Garry is so extraordinary and why we're so lucky to have him.
Well, yeah, and Garry was the opening story of our book, Leading with Gratitude, and in his time at WD-40. Really, you're a leader who used servant leadership, purpose, and what you call learning moments to drive real business outcomes. So let's jump in. Let's go back to the beginning, Garry. Maybe just tell us a little bit what shaped your view of leadership early in your career, and when did maybe the ideas that you used later start to crystallize?
Well, thanks, Adrian. Yeah, I was fortunate enough, as Chess said, to lead the company for 25 years. I was about the second year of my time as CEO. I had a challenge, take the blue and yellow can with a little red top to the world. And with my marketing, friends at WD-40, we knew how to do that. But what kept in my mind was, how do you build a culture where the sun is never going to set? Because anywhere in the world, 24 hours a day, people would be expected to make decisions and move forward. And I didn't want them to be quacking up the hierarchy or waiting for someone to wake up in San Diego to get an answer to an issue. I didn't know how to do that. It just swelled in my head. I was flying from Los Angeles to Sydney, 38,000 feet above the South Pacific Ocean, 2 a.m. in the morning. And as you do, I was reading a couple of things, and I read a quote that's attributed to the Dalai Lama. Our purpose in life is to make people happy. If you can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them. And I thought, what an amazing concept for business. If we didn't hurt people, if we sent them home happy, what would that do to their families? I thought, that's something. And about 5 minutes later, I read a quote from Aristotle, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. And I thought, oh, duh. If you really enjoy what you're doing, you're going to do it better. I still didn't know how to do it. I got back to San Diego, and I was reading the local newspaper, and I read about a master's degree at the University of San Diego. And it was put together by now my dear friend and probably my major mentor in life, Dr. Ken Blanchard, the guru of servant leadership. So I went to an information session, and Ken got up and he said, most MBA programs get people in the head. We've also got to start getting people in the heart. And I went, this could be it. So now I'm CEO of a US public company. 2 years in, I go back to school. I went to confirm what I thought I knew and learn what I didn't know. And for the next 2 years, under the tutelage of Dr. Ken Blanchard and many others, I really came to understand the principles of servant leadership, and we started to implement them in the company. So my first learning moment was, you don't know it all, go back to school. And it was just an amazing experience. Ken's now 85 years old. He doesn't live far from me, and I see him often, and I am his dear friend and a great mentor.
Yeah, we've studied his work as well. What a gift that he lives so close, and that you were to.
What a gift he is to the world, actually.
Yeah. You know, it's for those of you that aren't familiar with WD-40, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, we've all got a can somewhere. I don't think people really understand the scope. I mean, you took the company from what, basically 250 million to what? It's now 3 billion, 3.5.
Market cap 3.5 billion. Yeah.
Yeah. So you took over, and you talked about going back to school and whatnot. But as you took over as CEO, what was the culture like when you took over, and what was it specifically that you wanted to change? And more importantly, how did you do that? Like, we often say, okay, this is what needs to be changed, but we don't know how to actually action that.
Yeah. The culture wasn't bad, Ches. It just wasn't going to be a culture that would be aligned to a company that was global.
Okay.
The culture was very US centric. The company, you could just about talk to anybody you wanted any time of day, but we were going to be a company that was distributed across the world. So we had to really change. So, I think the first thing that was so important is, were we dedicated to being a people first culture? And that's where the whole idea of tribal came in. I said, we're not going to be a team, we're going to be a tribe. And being a tribe wasn't reflecting on any indigenous group. It was really reflecting the attributes of tribalism that actually go back to under the caveman. And interestingly enough, the number one responsibility of a tribal leader was to be a learner and a teacher. So that was the first thing. We were going to be learners and teachers. The second one is, did we have a clearly defined purpose? I often say, imagine a place where you go to work every day, you make a contribution to something bigger than yourself, you learn something new, you're protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and you go home happy. Well, stopping squeaks is not really a compelling purpose. But what we did realize is our purpose was going to be to create memories. So our purpose statement was, we existed to create positive, lasting memories, solving problems in factories, homes, and workshops around the world. We solved problems and we created opportunities for our end users, for our people in our organization, for the communities that we lived in. It was all encompassing. So people, purpose. The third one was, and it's really foundational, did we have a set of values, hierarchical values, that protected people and set them free? Most people think about values in the organization as being restrictive. I think they're there to set people free, because if you have a hierarchical set of values that are clearly defined, they should empower people to be able to make any decision, any time of day, anywhere, if they use the values. Then we said, okay, now we need to reduce fear in the organization. And fear is one of the most disabling emotions we have. And what I wanted people to be curious and experiment and be brave. So let's throw failure out and let's call it a learning moment. So we then created the learning moment, and the definition of the learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that needs to be openly and freely shared to benefit all people. And then we said, we're not going to manage people here. We're going to coach people. You manage your bank account, you manage inventory. What we wanted to be was a coach. And when you think about a coach, a great coach knows the game, knows what it takes to win. And I know you're a big fan of a special team, Chester, but you never see the coach of your special team going on the ice and taking the puck. They spend a lot of time on the sideline observing the play. They never go to the podium to pick up the prize. And they spend a lot of time in the stinky locker room, because the stinky locker room is where vulnerability and psychological safety and teamwork really happens. So with all those elements in place, what we wanted to do was appeal to what I think, and I think we've proven are the important things of great culture. Do people know and feel like they belong? Do people know, feel like, and see how what they do matters? Are they able to make choices and be independent through values? Are they set free by having learning moments instead of failures?
That's awesome. What a great, you've done this before. You've encapsulated, 25 years of leadership in a minute or two there. One of the things that you gave us an opportunity to come work with your board and your senior leadership once, and I looked in my garage, I looked under my sink, I found half a dozen products that were made by the WD-40 company. People don't realize how innovative you were, and you stretched way past the original can. I want to push on this idea of learning moments. You don't become that innovative. You don't get this many innovative products if you don't have these learning moments. How did that work? I mean, people around there told us we get excited when we make a mistake, if you will, which we don't call it here. So tell us a little bit more about that idea of learning moments.
Well, it's really, it gets back to psychological safety. I mean, and interestingly enough, WD-40 was born from learning moments. In 1953, there was a fledgling company in San Diego called Rocket Chemical Company. It specialized in making products for corrosion and water displacement. There was a challenge to stop corrosion in the umbilical cord of the Atlas space rocket. So the chemists at WD-40, and when I say chemists, there were probably 5 employees at that time, and maybe 2 of them were chemists, got together and started to formulate what they thought were solutions. Well, Formula 1 didn't work, and neither did 15 or 27, and 32 didn't work. 38 and 39 didn't work. So after 39 learning moments, WD-40, the 40th formula, worked. So, I think we were able to reflect on that as we talked to our people about, we were born from learning moments. Now, I'm pretty happy, Adrian, that 39 didn't work because I don't think WD-39 sounds anything as good as WD-40.
I think we all know WD-40 because we've just said it a billion times, It's also fascinating, and Adrian and I were quite taken with this, that in your headquarters, you wrote the 39 formulas that didn't work on the steps on the way to the second floor, which is a wonderful visual reminder. So the question I have for you is, so you made all these cultural improvements. The world is so impatient right now. How long did it take for you to see financial results? Because people are going to say, this all sounds great, but if I don't hit my numbers, I'm gone. So you focused on it. How long before you said, wow, this is really taking hold?
I have a friend of mine, Charlie Maloof. He owns a chain of Ashley furniture stores out in Charlotte, and he has a wonderful saying. Building culture is not a microwavable event. It takes a crock pot approach. And it's so true. So, how long did it take? It probably took us 3 to 4 years before we actually saw a momentum building where people actually believed that this culture was going to exist. Because most leaders think, I'm going to run this, I'll just get Chester in for one speech and he'll change the world. Well, you will. However, It's the second and third and fourth interaction. And as you guys know, when you're coaching leaders. So, this thing about ROI, if this was simple, everyone would do it. They think that the culture is a simple thing. It's not. It's culture equals values plus behavior times consistency. So, but eventually you get the ROI because I have a simple formula. You can write the best strategy in the world. We'll get together, we'll write a great strategic plan. We'll take it to some smart professor. Give us a score for this strategic plan. Good job, Ches. Good job, Adrian. Your strategic plan's 70 out of 100. But if only 30% of your people go to work every day and are passionate about executing against that plan, 30 times 70 is a number. But if you've got 80% of your people going to work every day, passionately executing against the plan, because they know and feel like they belong, they know what they do matters, they know that they can make choices, there's a low level of fear, 80 times 70 is a much bigger number. And that's what we proved. And so it takes time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Adrian and I always laugh about it. We'll be invited to speak to a company and they'll say, look, our culture is really in trouble. Sales are down, morale is down. We don't express gratitude to each other. So these are the big issues. If you could help us with it. Oh, by the way, you've got 45 minutes.
Yeah, right.
You go, sure.
Unless our CEO goes long. Then
you probably only got 30. Well, you've kind of answered my next question, and that's that culture versus business, or culture as a business strategy. How you get those people in, what did it look like in practice? So I guess I want to modify that question a little bit and say, what did you do when you found people that didn't buy into that culture? Because, it seems like, and we tell our stories and there's always a happy ending, right? What about those that looked at that and said, yeah, learning moments, I got your learning moment right here, pal. How did you deal with sort of those that didn't make the turn or didn't make the commitment?
Yeah. They weren't happy. So, I needed to understand, if they weren't happy in the environment, they deserve to be happy somewhere else. But that's important. And so the great thing about our culture was that we didn't have annual reviews. We had ongoing conversations. And we'd have at least a conversation every 90 days and many more times than that, where we'd ask the question, are you okay? What's on your mind? What's getting in your way? Am I supporting you as a coach? But more importantly, are we clear about what we're going to hold each other accountable for? Because most times disappointment comes from a lack of clarity of expectation. So we would say, in the first book I wrote with Ken Blanchard was helping people win at work. And the tagline or the byline is, I'm not here to mark your paper, I'm here to help you get an A. So we would say, so what does an A look like? And my job as the coach is to help you get that A. So during those conversations, we had people who would be better off and happier somewhere else. So we'll help them go there. We don't want to have those last minute conversations. We want them to be happy. So we help them go there. In the end, though, as you know, we had huge retention. 98% of 98% of our members globally said they'd love to tell people they worked at the company. And the one that's really interesting, and this one, Ches, is 97.7% of people said, I respect my coach. Now, their coach was their manager, right?
Right.
And most people leave organizations because they hate their boss. So we had nearly 98% of people said they respected the person they reported to. And when we asked them why, they said, because they're always here to help me win.
Oh, good.
That's so great. I love this conversation, Adrian. Can you imagine having a conversation with this great old employee, say, look, we want to create a really happy culture. Do you want to be happy? And they say, no.
No.
That's
great. Well, we've got one of our competitors would love to have you. And we included some of these statistics you're saying in Leading with Gratitude. It was just amazing. And we even had to put a disclaimer in there saying those numbers are right.
Right.
Yeah, 98%. Yeah. And I committed to the 90 whatever percent it was who felt trust within the organization. Okay, so I want to hear, now we need to kind of pull back the Superman cape here and say, when were those moments you maybe had to course correct? Maybe, you learned something along the way that you went, yeah, that one didn't really work as much as we thought. Is there anything you can think of throughout your process, or even something that came up, maybe a big decision that clashed with, what you were trying to build?
Yeah, I think that, because we made decisions based around our values, and I'll give you a nearly true story of how that works. Chester works in supply chain, right? And one day this person comes along and says, hi, I'm Adrian from Acme Chemical Company. Chester says, good to meet you, Adrian. He said, I'm going to make you a hero today, Chester. You are going to be a superstar. When I'm finished this conversation, you're going to be running up to your CEO's office. And when you share with him the result of our meeting, man, oh man, are you going to be happy? And guess what? You're a public company. And your shareholders are going to love you. And Jess says, Adrian, tell me more. So, well, I've done some work on your formulation, and there's an ingredient you use, and we, Acme Chemical Company, can supply that to you. And my arithmetic tells me that if you use my ingredient instead of the one you're using, you're going to drop $4 million to your bottom line. Wow. Shareholder value, that's what you're all about. Chester says, wow, that's pretty cool. Is there anything else I should know? And Adrian said, yeah, there's just one other thing. He said, what's that? He said, well, and don't worry about this because you're not going to be alone here. You just have to put a little warning on your can. In the state of California, contents of this can is known to cause cancer. It's called a Prop 65 warning. And but that's okay. You know, there are other similar products that have that on there, and you don't need to worry about it. It's not breaking the law as long as you put it on there. And Jess says, damn it. Well, you know, Adrian, thank you so much, but I can't take you up on your offer. I said, why? Well, we make decisions based on values here. And our first value is we value doing the right thing. And the second value is we value creating positive, lasting memories in all of our relationships. And as you know, cancer does not create positive, lasting memories. So we're not going to take you up on your offer. It's $4 million. You're a public company. That's why you exist. I said, well, yeah, maybe. Well, look, Chester, Adrian says, I've got to talk to the upper levels of the organization. You don't get it. And Chester says, you can talk to anyone you like in this organization. You can go talk to the chairman of the board if you want. Guess what? Because we live our values every day, you're going to get exactly the same answer. Yeah. Chester runs up to the CEO's office and says, hey, CEO, I just didn't save us $4 million. Why? I made a decision based on our values. Chester, you're promoted.
Right, there you go.
And what I loved, Gary, that you did there was that you actually prioritized your values. It's our first value. Because values can bump up against each other. If you have a value of speed and a value, say, of integrity, well, you know, which one wins out? You prioritized. And that made all the difference.
That's the true, and that's the strength. They're all hierarchical, because our number 6 value was we value sustaining the WD-40 economy. It was our final value, which was the one about profitability and efficiency and whatever. And I used to say, if we live the first 5, the 6th one happens. So I think, you know, it's so important to give people permission to be able to do things. The other thing that's really cool that we did was we created something, and I think I've shared it with you before, called the Maniac Pledge. And there's a disease that runs through organizations, and it's called the na-na-ni-na-na disease, the finger-pointing disease, right? Because people don't want to take responsibility. And I learned that words in organizations matter. Words like coach, learning moment. So I said, how do we give people permission to be responsible? So we created a thing called the Maniac Pledge, and it says, I am responsible for taking action, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I'm responsible for asking. I have no right to be offended I didn't get this sooner. And if I'm doing something others should know about, I'm responsible for telling them. And this is the antidote to the na-na-ni-na-na disease, which spreads rapidly when you're in a diversified organization in many countries or locations around the world. Because someone said, well, Chester didn't tell me that. Well, you knew you wanted to know. Why didn't you ask? And this was actually the pledge that gave people the authority, the permission, and requested that they act like that, which was so powerful.
I love your first value. You and I have talked about this before. We do the right thing. By the way, if you can't live the first value, the other 5 don't matter. If you just can't do the right thing. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit to, leading through uncertainty, because 25 years, I mean, you saw it all. You saw an economic turndown. You saw the pandemic. You saw supply chain. All that stuff came into play. So how did your culture keep people grounded through the tough times? When times are good, values are great, everybody's buying in. But then you've got that opportunity in bad times to make that $4 million decision. That $4 million all of a sudden is real money to the company. How do you keep your people grounded in tough times?
It's interesting. One of the questions we had in our employee opinion survey was, I'm excited about my place in the company's future. And I'll give you a real example of that. It's January 2021. Remember that time? COVID was around. We didn't know whether, the world was going to come to an end or not. Vaccines weren't necessarily, solid at that time. We'd lived this thing since March 2020. And, you guys thankfully came along and did some work with us and did some virtual stuff for us. So I said to the team, I wonder whether we're draining cultural equity. We were doing a lot, and we went into COVID with a very, very strong culture, which really was the thing that took us through it. I said, let's let's go out and do a pulse survey and just check to see whether what we think and feel is real. So we did a pulse survey, and the numbers came back, and they were pretty much the same as they were in March 2020. So I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. We've really held up. But there was one that went up, and it was the one that said, I'm excited about my place in the company's future. And it went to like nearly 98% from where it was. And I thought, how can that be right? We're in this time of absolute uncertainty, and people are excited about being here in the future. There's something wrong. Go back and check all the numbers. Check the data. There's something wrong. They went back. No, it's right. I said, okay, I've got to find out more about this. This was probably the proudest day I had in my whole life at WD-40. We went and asked, and people said, I feel safe.
That's brilliant.
If there's any place I want to be right now, I want to be here because I feel safe. And I went, okay, and I'm nearly tearing up now. And, when I reflect on going back, day one of the pandemic, I called the leadership team together and I said, we need 3 things we're going to concentrate on now until this uncertainty goes away. And we said, okay, here's the 3 things we're going to focus on every day. The safety and the well-being of our people is number 1. Number 2, serving our customers as best we can. Number 3, protect the underbody of our company so we can thrive when this is over. And every meeting we had of the leadership, and we were meeting every day, we were meeting about that. And we start with asking ourselves those 3 questions. Have we done what we need to do today to protect and to care for our people? Have we done what we need to do today to serve our customers? Have we done what we need today to protect the underbody of our business? And that's what we focused on, and that's what we talked about. And it was really about focus that was so important, because in that time, as you know, you could get caught up in the confusion. There was so much going on.
One quick story I want to share with our listeners about this safety. I remember coming to you when the vaccine was out and everything, and when you checked in, you had 3 wristbands, which I loved. There was a green wristband which said, you can hug me, you can shake my hand, no problem. The yellow wristband was, we'll bump fists, but we're no hugging. And the red one was, keep your distance. You didn't then have to have that awkward moment. You just see the wristband and go, hey, give me a hug, or give me a fist bump, or wave. Yep. Those little things, the way you translated that safety, I thought that was evidence that somebody at the front desk said, hey, let's just have different colored wristbands. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Hey, so turn this a little bit, and people turn to you now for advice on how to correct or how to work on their cultures. So a leader's taking over maybe a disconnected team, a burned out team, which we're finding so much of right now. What's your advice to leaders when they come in to an environment and they don't have maybe 5 years or even 3 years to get up to speed? What's the low-hanging fruit? What should they be doing as they take over an organization?
Well, the first thing they need to do is look in the mirror. Who are they as a leader? Because most leaders don't really know or really understand how their behaviors impact others. And so in the coaching work that I do now, and my purpose now is I help leaders build cultures of belonging where love, forgiveness, and learning inspire a happier, more connected world. And the first part of that is let's look in the mirror. Who are you as a leader? What are you doing? And then after we've identified that is now intention. What are you intentionally going to do now on a consistent basis to build belonging, to make sure people feel like they matter, the things that I've shared before? And we've got to do it consistently. I think that a lot of leaders have burnout because they are master micromanagers. I got to forward somebody, you know this fella, don't you? This is Alec or this is Alec or Alice, as it could be. His name originally was Al, but in my book, when I wrote the book, Al came out looking like AI. So I had to change his name to Alec, and I thought, why didn't I think of that before? Because smart Alec, right?
So, smart Alec. Yeah, there you go.
If you're a leader out there, and here's some of his attributes, His ego eats his empathy instead of his empathy eating his ego. They're a micromanager. They have to be in everything. They think they're corporate royalty. They love a fear-based culture. They're a master of control. They're a know-it-all. They have all the answers, even the wrong ones. They don't value learning. They must always be right. They hate feedback, and they don't keep their commitments. So if you want to turn that around, who do you need to be as a leader to build this organization? You need to be a leader that loves and involves their people. They're always in servant leadership mode. They're expected to be competent, so they're continually learning. They're connected with emotional intelligence. They're spending time in that stinky locker room. They love learning moments. They have a heart of gold, but they have a backbone of steel, because leadership is a balance between being tough-minded and tender-hearted. They're champions of hope. They're absolutely champions of hope. They know micromanagement is absolutely not scalable. They do what they say they're going to do, and they value the gift of feedback.
And all of that you can find in this wonderful book, Any Dumbass Can Do It, available at fine bookstores everywhere. By the way, I keep my little Alec in the, the toys in the original packaging are just worth more. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, we're going to go to the lightning round here, Gary. So just first thing that pops into your mind, okay, as we wrap up. What's one leadership principle that hasn't failed you?
Love.
Excellent. A book that changed how you think about business or people?
Everything You Need to Know You Learn in Kindergarten by Robert Fulghum.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's good, yeah.
Finish this sentence. A thriving culture is...
Inclusive.
Love it.
That's, by the way, the fastest lightning round we've ever done, Gary.
Yeah. A man, a few words. Hey, Gary, this has been really incredibly energizing. Now, for folks who want to learn a little bit more, obviously they're going to pick up the book, but they want to learn more about you and your new organization. Where do you point them?
My website is www.thelearningmoment.net. And, of course, follow me on LinkedIn. I post there regularly every week. I have the School of Dumbassery now on LinkedIn, so if you want to join the school. Because I am the Dean of Dumbassery. This is me. Probably wrong and roughly right, and need all the help I can get.
That is brilliant. Gary, we knew this was going to be more fun than we should be allowed. You're one of the most kind and generous people I know. Really, treat yourself to the book. It's practical. It's easy. It's easy to understand. It's a great read, and it's a memorable title. What can we say? Gary, a delight to have you on our podcast. Thank you so much for finding the time. And to all of you that listened, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to learn from one of our heroes, Garry Ridge.
Thank you, Chaz. Thank you, Adrian, for the work you do, because you do amazing work. And you know how much I appreciate you guys and what you do. And you make the world a better place because you're here. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Gary.
Cheers.